One of the interesting things about, well, not interesting, but one of the things about the accounting standards codification is if you're trying to figure out a particular situation that you're facing with some kind of exposure risk and you're trying to figure out how to account for that, are there any examples? I strongly recommend, because this is exactly how I figure stuff out. Because trust me, I do not memorize the codification. But so, for example, I wanted to figure out how to deal with a fair value hedge of a foreign commitment, or for any kind of a fair value hedge model with a foreign transaction. So let me tell you exactly what I did, and what we'll do is we'll kind of go through not the example, but I'll try to come up with some interesting example or some discussion. So what I did is I went to our broad transactions, and we're dealing with hedge accounting in foreign exchange. So I went to derivatives and hedging. And the first thing I wanted to look at is fair value hedges. So these are going to be foreign exchange transactions that are on my books and records. They are denominated in different foreign currency, and we know that if we have a foreign transaction, we have to move it to our functional currency. And if our functional currency is also the reporting currency, then we're done, right? But it has to move to the functional currency. So I went to fair value hedges, and we've looked at a lot of these paragraphs, but I went to the implementation guidance and illustration, because there are a number of different examples here. And what I did was very simply, I just hit Control F because I wanted to find something on this page, and I typed in foreign right up here, and found out how many instances of foreign exist. And I went all the way down to example 10, and I found fair value hedge of a firm commitment denominated in a foreign currency with a forward to purchase a different foreign currency. Right? So this at least gave me an idea of maybe how to create an interesting example. And I strongly recommend, as you're trying to figure things out, these illustrations, these suggested ideas that are sitting in the codification are very helpful. And I will also tell you that if you really pay close attention, and I do, to textbooks, where do you think these textbook writers are starting to come up with their examples to write in their textbooks? They're going to the codification. And in some cases, they just take the exact example out of the codification and slap it in their textbook. So, we don't need to always look at textbooks. Let's go right to the codification and figure stuff out. So I was thinking about how to write an interesting example, or how to describe an interesting example of a particular item or particular transaction that you faced when you were, I'm not exactly sure when you learned about inventory, whether it was in summer 2 or the first summer, but that doesn't matter. I know you had some exposure to inventory. And so what we are looking at here is some companies will do forward purchase commitments. Right? These are contracts, not just I think I'm going to buy it. At a price, at a date. And that's just so we can lock down our price. The issue with this is if these are firm forward purchase commitments, what happens if the market price or the fair value of the inventory decreases? And you learned this, or should have learned this, in your previous accounting courses. Well, as soon as losses reveal themselves, you become aware of a loss, you have to recognize losses immediately. If the market price of this inventory went up, we ignore it. because we recognize losses immediately because the principle is conservatism. So we don't recognize the gains, but we recognize the losses. Right? That was in ASC 330. Now, let's come up with a interesting idea where we do a firm purchase commitment for some inventory, right? So we're going to buy inventory. And we are going to, the price is, how many ever pounds or whatever we're going to get. We're going to give them a price, and we're going to pay 1 million euro. Okay, that's what we're going to pay, right? It's a transaction that's denominated in a foreign currency. Right? So we've got two potential risks here. Two risks. The first risk, risk one, is the price of the inventory. That's definitely a risk. Risk two is the FX risk. All right. Now, you may not be able to get either on balance sheet or off balance sheet a instrument that's going to do both. And you don't need to. And in fact, you may not even care about the price, the risk of the inventory going down. You may not care. You might care, you might not care. And so you may not even manage that risk. You might not even hedge that risk. But this one you might. But these are all decisions. These are all decisions that we have to make. So the question is, what kind of instrument would we use just to identify or to isolate the FX risk? What we can do is we can enter into a forward contract, right? We can go a forward contract. And what should we do? What should the forward contract? If you're trying to manage that, I have to spend €1 million and you're concerned about FX risk, why not get into a forward contract to purchase €1 million at around the same date that I'm going to buy this inventory? Wouldn't these offset each other? The answer to that is yes. Now, if I was dealing with a different currency, some other currency other than the euro, and maybe I couldn't find a forward purchase contract, I'd have to take a look at how well the euro moves with that other currency. But just for this little example, I'm going to go like and like. So I know that these are highly correlated, right? The fair value of this forward purchase commitment for the inventory in €1 million is perfectly correlated with the forward contract to purchase €1 million. So this would be highly effective. Our hedged item is the FX risk. The hedged risk is the FX risk. And the hedging instrument is the forward contract. And we can prove that it will be effective both retrospectively and prospectively. And the thing we've got to do is we've just got to make sure that we document all of this. And the accounting is both of these transactions go the FX risk is going to be fair value, go through the income statement, and so is the forward contract to purchase €1 million. Now, the interesting thing to me is if I get into this forward contract, and I haven't quite figured out, I've been trying to figure this out. I know that I have this forward purchase commitment, future purchase commitment to buy this inventory, and there's FX risk associated with it. Because there's FX risk associated with it, I have to convert this forward purchase commitment into my functional currency. And that change, that remeasurement, goes to the income statement, right? We know that. Well, this is, this is under ASC 830. ASC 830-20. That was the foreign exchange transactions. And I also know that this forward contract, right? If it's a derivative. How do we account for derivatives? Fair value, changes in fair value, go to the income statement. And that's under ASC 815-10. So why would I go through the process, right? And these are the questions you got to ask yourself as the accountant. Why would I go through the process of designating this as hedge accounting if the natural placement of the literature is going to make all of this go through the income statement anyway? Haven't quite figured that out. Be interested to see if in any of your research, any of the reading that you do, you can get some clarity on this. But I don't think if you had something like this and you were getting into a derivative and this is a fair value hedge, why you would ever even invoke ASC 815 for hedge accounting. I think you just use ASC 830-20 and ASC 815-10 and just let both pieces, the FX risk repricing, remeasurement through the income statement, and the derivative through the income statement. I think you get the exact same outcome as you would if you tried to get hedge accounting. These are things that I think about. I know it seems weird, but that's the kind of stuff that bothers me. That there's some, because functionally I don't know if I would go through all the process of trying to figure out whether or not it's effective or it's ineffective, and whether or not I've got to document all of this. That seems like a lot of extra work where I'm likely going to get the exact same outcome otherwise.